really excited about it. This slide right here is just, actually, Sid made these slides for me from my notes. So props to Sid for making beautiful slides, but shame on me for not coordinating my notes very well with it. All right, what is DevOps? That's the one I was looking for. So DevOps, before we can get to DevSecOps, we need to understand a little bit about DevOps. Some people who signed up for this call actually are DevOps engineers. That's something that I noticed. And there's other people who are automated test engineers, which tells me that your company probably is hinting towards some DevOpsy stuff. Because what DevOps is, to rewind it a little bit, the best way to answer that question of what DevOps is probably more easy if we just define engineering. So I've got that written on my card right here. That's a bulk of my notes for this card. Engineering is the branch of science and technology concerned with the design, building, and use of engines, machines, and structures. So it's a pretty simple definition of engineering, but really it's design, building, and using engines, machines, and structures. DevOps is engineering specifically for the development and operations that a business will need. So development is engineering, operations is engineering. DevOps is dedicating resources, human resources and technical resources to making development and operations smoother and easier. That's the most boiled down version that I can get to you. It's a methodology that incorporates both human and technical strategies. It is an extension of agile. Is that what this says up here? I need to make sure I get my, yep. It is an extension of agile. So that I like to bring up and remind us, because agile is all about smoothing over processes so that way more work can be done, removing roadblocks. DevOps is engineering the agile process, adding a lot more automation into that process. DevSecOps should be our next slide. Oh, DevOps and developers. Can you guys tell that this is the first time that I've done this this slide deck? So DevOps and developers, what is the distinction? Developers will have a DevOps mentality as they grow in their experience, but they might not be given the title of a DevOps engineer. But a good senior level or even a great mid-level developer is going to have a DevOps mentality about breaking down those barriers between development and operations. A good developer is going to think about how they're designing their application in a way that it can be used well and delivered well by the operations teams. And so having or by the DevOps teams is often the case. In shops that use DevOps, they'll allocate people for DevOps. So developers can have a DevOps mentality, though they may not be hired in a DevOps role. So now DevOps and DevSecOps. That was a slide I thought was next. The difference between DevOps and DevSecOps is not really a very big difference. When we're doing development and when we're doing operations, we should already be thinking about security along the way. But as I mentioned a minute ago, a good developer will be thinking about operations. And a good operations engineer is going to be thinking about the applications and the build process that goes into those applications that are coming down the pipeline to him. In the same way, when we start evolving to include security in every step of that process, thinking about security all along the way from code to cloud, we're thinking about security. That's when we start calling it DevSecOps, because it is an evolution. It is just a little bit of a step beyond, where we're not just saying, yeah, the cloud's secure, but we're actually really actively thinking about how to secure our tools and our processes. Some of the security elements that are on this screen might be pretty obvious. Package security is a really big deal. You know what? I'm not going to go into this too big. CVE stands for common vulnerabilities and exploits. Whoa. All right. So if you guys want to go into a little bit deeper about what DevOps, how security comes into DevOps, this slide right here is a really good starting point for you to just kind of jump off and see what different pieces security is responsible for. But I'm going to get a little bit deeper into that in a second. And so I just wanted to use this as a example to show you guys how much security really is able to get involved in that process. This right here, I alluded a minute ago to the awesome stuff that the Department of Defense is doing when it comes to incorporating automation engineering into their entire process. The cyber domain is what they refer to this as. So there's the land domain. That's why in World War I, we just had the Army. Then the Navy, I guess, both of those exist in World War I. And in World War II, we got the Air Force, right? So we have the water domain, we have the land domain, we have the air domain. Now we have the Space Force. But all of those interfere with the cyber domain along the way. And the Department of Defense is very, very, very keenly aware of the role of the cyber domain when it comes to Homeland Security and the security of missions and operations all around the world. So this slide got a little bit fuzzy, but this shows us the pillars of DevSecOps according to the Department of Defense, which is kind of to my surprise. The Department of Defense is absolutely a leader in this area. And I'm going to drop a link to an amazing training document that they have in that area. So here, if we take a look into this, we can see that there's 3 of these pillars are human pillars. So if we wanted to say that there's a human domain to their warfare, this is absolutely how they're involving it. They're knowing that there needs to be a lot of planning that goes into the organization and how you're incorporating your people and organizing your people in a way that they can take a DevSecOps approach to things. The process is also a human element, but you're getting a little bit more enforcing. So when it comes to organization, you're structuring things, you're trying to get people to buy in, to commit to it. With process, you're putting a little bit more enforcement into it. You're requiring people to write tests and things like that. ATO is a term that's specific to the DoD, but it's similar to how we would say CI/CD. The continuous integration and continuous delivery of software is the equivalent to that for them is ATO. Technology is the only thing in here that we see where it's really tech based. And so when we think of IT, having 3 of our 4 pillars be human elements, it can seem a little bit counterintuitive. But that's absolutely the case when it comes to DevSecOps, because a very large portion of it is how are you organizing, how are you communicating, and just how are you looking at the problems as they come up. So these are the 4 pillars that will be in the document that I send you guys a link to. The same document, it's a pretty big document, so they had a lot of visuals. So this is really digging into the life cycle of DevSecOps. So in this approach that they're designing here, this ecosystem that they have set up, they are actually tasking people as DevSecOps admins. And these people are going to be taking a look at things from all over the board. I'm sorry, I'm waving my hand in front of the camera as if it makes any sense, but I'm gesturing at the grid here. So as we see this arrow, it goes in a circle around from plan to develop, build, test, release, deliver, deploy, operate, monitor. And it goes back into planning, because as you monitor the things that your operations are doing, you're able to plan for how to continuously develop and continuously iterate over that. So this is a really fun visual, because it also shows how your life cycle for your application is directly connected to something, to enterprise services, external services, such as an artifact repository. This is a huge element to DevOps and DevSecOps, especially because it helps us to be able to secure images, whether they're VM images or container images, and have them available for applications to use. And this is a phrase called hardening. CIS is something that you might want to look into on your own time if you want to look at hardened images. But a lot of enterprise level, a lot of enterprises, such as the bank that I work at, will do some hardening and ongoing scanning to images to make sure that the enterprise services are providing security to individual applications as they run. Enterprise AO and local AO in that visual just means a product owner. It's an authorizing official in their term, but it's showing that there is a degree of oversight that will happen, but that oversight doesn't have direct involvement in the workflow. And that's the beauty of this, is that you can have highly secure applications and missions, in this case, as they design them. You can have highly secure missions that only have a degree of oversight. If you see these red arrows there, that's where you have delegated humans who will stop the automated flow and take a look at it and make sure that it's running the way that it's intended to be running. But according to their own documents, they say that you should be reducing those red arrows over time. So there should be fewer and fewer red arrows, those control gates where humans are needing to stop the workflow and interfere and make sure that things are up to speed. Your security should be codified. It should be automated. It should be set up so well that you should engineer your security into every step of the application build process, so that way you have fewer need for humans to be involved. That reminds me of something that I should have mentioned a moment ago. If I do this presentation again, I'll make sure to get all this sequencing right on it. But one of the biggest things about DevSecOps, as I mentioned a minute ago, it's DevOps with a security mentality. That being said, with just regular DevOps, a DevOps professional, somebody who's hired as a DevOps professional, such as myself at the bank that I work at, the biggest skill, the most important skill that you'll have is knowing when to tell the developers this is your job, and to pass it off to them, and to tell operations like, hey, I need you to take care of this. And that same skill is to know when to call them and say, hey, we're doing some stuff that's our job, but we need you over here right now to kind of guide it and speak into this. That way we can deploy your application well, or so that way this application is fitting into the infrastructure as a whole in a proper way. And so knowing when to call the guys and bring them in and get their insight is extremely, extremely important. The mission application team also includes security, though, when we're working in a DevSecOps mentality. And so a DevSecOps professional, should you be hired in that type of a role, will need to know enough about security to know when to call a security professional. This is in no way removing the need to have security professionals employed by your organization, especially when you've got lives on the line like the Department of Defense does. But the DevSecOps admin team in this example is going to know enough about security to know when to call them in and speak to different issues. So this is just an absolutely beautiful visual of how it might play out in the real world. And down there in the left side, you see where it says software factory. This is a terminology that I really, really love, because it's honing in to show us that, and this is honing in, that the actual process of building that application is very complex and very, it's not suddenly less complicated because we've built this DevSecOps ecosystem. Developers that are writing code are still going to have just as hard of a job as they've ever had, but we can automate it for them. We can build in tools that make it easier for their application to go from code to cloud. The goal in the artifact the goal in the software factory is to have a pipeline that will result in delivering your code to an artifact repository that then will be able to deploy your code to production environments. And this is just a nice little visual that I'm going to leave it on for a second before we shift into Q&A. Again, there's some red control gates there. I would really love for you guys to think for a moment about any examples From your experience, if you're a developer, you might have some questions from this screen. And then I'm going to flip over to the slide that was before it. You might have, if you're looking at this from a little bit of a higher level, you might have some questions from this screen. And so if you guys can just start dropping some questions into the chat, I'm going to start shifting into those right now. And boom, Q&A slide. Sid, did you have any thoughts before I start reading off the screen? You wanna moderate that process?
I would say that there was a question that came in during the chat, which was from Rhonda, and the question was, what containerized technologies will the course use? If you want to kick off with that question.
Yeah, that's great. So that's a really good question, specifically for anybody who might not be familiar with how broad of a term containerization is. Docker are the guys who really got the ball going when it comes to popularizing containerization. But now we have things like CoreOS that used to be extremely obscure, but are now a main competitor to Docker in the industry. And so it's a really, really good question. So when we work with Kubernetes, we are going to be working with Docker technologies as opposed to CoreOS technologies, which are native to OpenShift. And that's something that I would love to dig into. And it's just an amazing amount of technology that we can go into. But because Docker has such a warm, welcome space in the containerized world, the documentation around using Docker is so widespread. We're going to use Docker for containerizing applications. And when we switch over to learning Kubernetes, we are going to use Docker in there as well. We might touch on Swarm just enough to give an introduction to it. But in my experience, and here's another little freebie for anybody that's looking to get some insight from my experience. The cloud organizations that I've worked with that have used Swarm have all used it long enough to say, yeah, we tried that, and then move on to specifically Kubernetes. So we're going to skip that straight over. Cloud hosted Kubernetes. We are going to touch on that. You will not leave the course without knowing a little bit about that. I haven't looked into the curriculum to promise how deep we're going to go into that, but yes, the literal answer to your question is yes. I'm not sure exactly how deep we're going to go into that right now, because we're in the process of rewriting some of the later curriculum for the 8-week course.
And Eddie, we've got a couple questions in the Q&A. Do you want to grab them out of there, or would you like me to moderate them?
Yeah, you're better at this than I am.
I don't know about that.
There's 2 chat channels.
There's as we got confused earlier, there's the chat, and then there's also the Q&A feature. So I can
yeah, read it off for me, because
right.
I see it, but I can't click. I can't get it.
You got it. All right. So what are some tool sets used within the DevSecOps environment?
Tool sets used. Yes. So this is going to be something that is very, very shifting. And so I like that you said like tool sets. So an example of something that is very common is to use Jenkins. A parallel to that would be TeamCity. I actually currently have teams that I support that use both within the same organization. And so Jenkins we might use to deploy directly deploying containers to Kubernetes service, or something that right now I'm seeing is that we're actually using Jenkins to trigger off OpenShift builds that will then work, that will then manage the Kubernetes containers, and bring in other tools such as Portworx to be able to manage the volume provisioning. And another item in that toolbox would be HashiCorp Vault. We are going to touch on HashiCorp's Terraform in the course, which is pretty exciting for me. I wish that I got to use it professionally more often. Professionally, I end up using Ansible very often, but that's simply because Ansible's a little bit more So Terraform orchestrates things and Ansible automates things. And so since I'm an automation engineer, I spend a lot more time with Ansible. And so I'm really excited to be able to show you guys how to use Terraform and dig into that and use that. I totally sidebarred in the middle of that question. So Jenkins is going to be interacting with artifact repositories. Artifactory is the one that's default for us. JFrog is not uncommon. I haven't personally used it. Let's see. Sid, we got any other questions?
Yeah, absolutely we do. So another question that came in is JavaScript the dominant language that we will be using? Assuming in the course.
In the course, yeah. So we've got a lot of stuff that we're going to be doing in the command line. We're going to be using, trying to think of how much we're going to be programming in this particular course. I think it's going to be a lower amount of programming. You'll need to be able to understand how code works. You'll need to be able to understand some loops and some conditions and things like that. You'll need to be able to see it and understand it, but there's not going to be a lot of programming that's going to be going on because the goal is to be for you to understand how Kubernetes works, understand how to containerize an application and deploy it. And so actually writing those applications is not going to be something that we're going to be touching on as well. Writing an application, we're not going to be touching on. You could be scripting it, and JavaScript would work for if you wanted to be scripting and automating some of the stuff that we're going to be working on. Absolutely. That's not going to be something we're going to lean into too deep. Go ahead.
One of the things that I can include in the post-call recap with the deck and the DoD file is a course syllabus. So for anyone that has kind of deeper questions on what will be included, I'll make sure to include that. Another question that came in was, what advice can you provide to development teams that like to start developing immediately versus taking the time to think about some of the key areas of what they're developing that may impact DevSecOps? What a thoughtful question, Rhonda. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. So, when I do my personal projects, a lot of times I just want to get something up, right? I just want to see something. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. There's nothing inherently wrong with that, right? But we need process. When we're working around something that needs to be secured, when we're working around something that's going to be touched by a lot of people, and if we're thinking about the Department of Defense, you've got lives that are on the line. When we think about banking, you've got people's paychecks that are on the line for this, and so your expectations start getting lifted higher and higher and higher. The more important your application is, and I would advise that every team look at their application as if it's as important as something that's protecting people's lives and something that is protecting people's paychecks. Because if you incorporate a process and tools into your workflow, if you have a workflow that includes planning and this sort of mentality and philosophy, you'll be more able to protect your reputation. And protecting the reputation of your product, regardless of what your product is protecting your paycheck. And it's protecting your employees' paychecks, it's protecting your teammates' paychecks. And so I would say that every team who's building a product that they're making money off of should be treating it like it's the most important thing and looking at it from a more procedural approach.
Thank you. All right, another question that came in. Will we be using Selenium within Python for automation?
Not in the course.
Perfect. We had some more questions on the 8-week course. So if you want, would you be able to give a high, I kind of gave the details on, it starts July 14th. It's part-time Tuesday, Thursday from 6 to 9 p.m. for those folks that are interested, but would you be able to give kind of a highlight of what people can expect in that course?
Yeah, do you want me to bring up the syllabus, or do you want to screen share it and I can answer some other questions while you're pulling it up?
I don't have the syllabus available immediately, but I can shoot that out in an email. It's kind of long. Oh, you have it? Okay.
Great. I do have it. All right, I'm going to stop screen sharing for just a second. While I'm switching over to the syllabus, let's see if I can fly through another question off the CD.
Had more questions on tool sets used in the DevSecOps environment. I know you kind of hit on that lightly already. And then another one was, what are your thoughts on using Python and Terraform for cloud security automation?
Yeah. So Terraform is definitely one that we're going to be leaning into a lot. And something that I will continuously say, and I'll scream until I'm blue in the face, is when you need to automate something, use what you know. So our philosophy matters. Our approach matters. How we come at things matters. But which language we use is going to be a little bit less important. So Python, I think, is the most beautiful language, but somebody else might know Ruby better. And well, it's not really a good scripting language example. Might know JavaScript better. And so absolutely use what you know. When it comes to Jenkins, for example, Jenkins has its own groovy language that it writes its pipelines in, but the CloudBees professionals themselves have spoken out on this topic of don't spend time learning Groovy unless the only thing you do is Jenkins. If the only thing you do is Jenkins, then yeah, Groovy is going to help you. But if Jenkins is part of your toolbox, then use whatever language you know, write your scripts and reference them from your pipeline. And so I would say that, yeah, we're definitely going to be using Terraform because it's a good tool. But if other teams are using different stuff because that's what they know, there's nothing wrong with that at all.
Would you mind hitting on tool sets again? So what are some of the tool sets used within the DevSecOps environment?
Yeah. So
you don't need a new answer. I wonder if a couple people missed the original question. So feel free to just reiterate.
It's also possible that I missed the question, didn't really answer it well enough. So your cloud delivery is going to be, your cloud engines are going to be on Azure, AWS, Google Cloud, and recently IBM is starting to build their cloud. I can't say anything negative about it because I'm on the team that's working with Bank of America to build their financial services platform for it. But it is a newcomer to that. And so I wouldn't recommend that anybody who's learning go into IBM Cloud. I would stick with the 3 seasoned, more mature applications. Let me see. I've almost got this so I can share the. When it comes to tool sets, what part of the toolbox are you thinking of? Because I kind of touched on a minute ago, like Jenkins, TeamCity, Terraform, Ansible, different programming languages will come in for scripting, which can be very, very helpful. Kubernetes versus Swarm it's not a very heated debate, but those are options that are parallel to each other. Are there any other toolbox specific questions that Ruby and Go are the queens? Oh man. All right. Yeah, so I'd love to answer specific questions on the tool set if I didn't go deep enough on that. I just skimmed a little bit. Now, this is the item that Sydney is going to be sending out. We are going to touch on version control, agile, and the software development lifecycle at the beginning. So it's going to kind of ease us in and kind of talk about them from a perspective of DevSecOps. I'm sorry, I'm going to take a drink of water real quick. In week 2, it's going to be a little Jenkins heavy, and we're going to get in some of the concepts of how we would use something like Jenkins. Week 3, we're going to keep using Jenkins, and we're going to connect Artifactory for our images. And we're going to take a Spring Boot application that is in our Artifactory, and we're going to deploy it with Jenkins. Week 4, we're going to do some similar stuff, but using Terraform and AWS. Week 5, we're going to start Dockerizing stuff. And this is where I mentioned a minute ago that we're rewriting a little bit of the curriculum. There are some really, really smart people that are consulting and working together to make sure that this curriculum is up to date. And so this particular syllabus that I have saved on my machine doesn't reflect what weeks 5 through 8 will be exactly, but the security side of things, we'll definitely be getting into OWASP, which is the web application security. I'm Googling it because I forget exactly what it stands for. It's the open web application security project. So it's a really good tool, similar to CIS that I mentioned ago. That's another organization that does the image hardening. So OWASP is kind of similar in that it's a really good resource for that, for the security spectrum, similar to the Center for Internet Security. The other things that we're definitely going to be touching on are Kubernetes, AWS, general application fortification, that's hardening. We're going to touch on that, what it looks like to minimize the risk, reduce your surface area of a containerized application. We are going to talk about that also. Sid, cue me up on another train of thought.
Yes, one more question we had come in. What are some of the challenges that you have encountered with automating, I don't want to mess this one up, SIEM response actions in DevSecOps?
Yes. Can you read the question one more time? Is it what problems have I faced?
Yeah, what's the word? How do you say it? How do you say SIEM? Is that SIEM? We'll go with it. Okay. What are some of the
I spend all day typing back and forth. It's the information and event management.
Perfect. What are some of the challenges you have encountered with automating SIEM response actions in DevSecOps?
Problems that I've had. Ooh.
Challenges you've encountered with automating it.
That's tough because I work with people that are so much smarter than me. So in that particular area. Yeah.
Or words of wisdom.
Oh, thanks for the easy out. You know, I don't know that I'm going to be super impressive with an answer on that one. And that's not even false humility. That's humiliation. So SIEM, SIEM is, it's going to be used to take all the different resources from across your organization or your infrastructure that you have, and it's going to be kind of like aggregating them and looking at them. Trying to think of, nope, I don't have the experience to answer that well. I'm not going to try to BS an answer through that. I do not have the experience to answer that question well. I apologize.
No problem. I think honesty is always the best policy. So
I'm trying to think if I could be useful, and I'm like, I can't be useful to you in that one. I'm sorry.
That's all right. So I think that covers the majority of the questions, at least so far. We'll give everyone a couple more minutes to chime in. I can also unmute if anyone wants to physically or to get on and audibly ask questions or network. I mean, that's kind of what we're here for. So
yeah, let me get that get these links in here. Because I think we're winding down towards the end of the call, especially for anybody who's not looking to the course specifically. Seems like we're probably shifting into more course specific material. So I'm going to drop, if I can find where that, here we go. So this is the DoD article that is about building a DevSecOps organization. And the other one was this syllabus. You're going to send out the syllabus, right?
Yep. I'll make sure to send an email out to anybody who RSVP'd on this with this file, the content deck from the presentation. So you guys can take that with you, the syllabus, and then any other information that you guys may have questions about. And you're welcome to kind of communicate with me directly or Eddie. So I'll make sure we're both on that email. But we're here to be resources, really, and connect and network.
I don't think that second link worked.
We'll make sure we get the right one out to you guys.
Oh, I think it did. Yeah. Okay. So those are two resources that I think will be, regardless of who's on the call, I think that those are two resources that are very, very helpful. The first one, you have to be really interested in it. It's a deep dive. But that one's really fun. Somebody asked a question in the pre questions about like where is the industry going as far as hiring SecDevOps? And that I thought was like a really, really good question, but specifically because SecDevOps is a mentality and approach. And if you have any of the skill sets in this, and so that's part of the reason that I don't know very much about SIM, is because SecDevOps gets we get kind of moved around into different parts, different areas. And as the industry goes more and more mainstream with DevOps, security is becoming a bigger and bigger part of how that's all getting organized. Security as code and automation engineering for security is becoming a really big deal. And so even if you don't find job openings for SecDevOps or DevSecOps, there are absolutely people and companies who are trying to find people who have this approach, who have this mentality, who have this way of working that brings all of that IT process into one perspective, and that makes people very, very hireable in my experience. So I can't, obviously, for any reasons, forecast what the job market's going to be post COVID, but I can say that right now people are still hitting me up on LinkedIn because they just look at the tools that I know how to use and they say, yeah, we need those tools. We need people who know how to use Kubernetes, because there's not enough people who have even tried to use Kubernetes out on the market. And so there's definitely jobs out there, though they might not be titled DevSecOps jobs.
One of the things that I can share from an HR perspective is that CBRE released a report recently on jobs and real estate in the market, and the IT roles are actually the only in the top. They come in fourth in the jobs least affected by the pandemic, and then only to really be beat out professionally by healthcare, your delivery services, so your grocery store services. But in terms of professional careers, the job security and the IT has proven to be far and away the most secure, which has been really interesting.
I've definitely seen that firsthand. So that's really good.
And one of the other things I think is really interesting to note on the job front is that this report came out in February of this year. There's 500,000 open IT roles, not specific to DevSecOps, but IT roles nationally in the US. And there's only 63,000 computer science majors graduating on an annual basis. So if you think about the supply versus the demand, and if you look at the stats, I think about 44% of folks that are in IT roles have degrees in computer science. So really this is the market where you don't need to have a degree. Most people that are in the role and who are authorities on the role have either been self-taught or learned from a mentor or taken a boot camp. There's so many different avenues to get to those roles these days. It's an endless opportunity from what I've seen.
Definitely. Appreciate that.
Yeah. So
are we at the last call for questions?
Last call for questions. There's one more, well, maybe two more. We're getting a couple now that are trickling in. There's inevitably lots of overlap, but do you all see more promising opportunities in cloud or security in IT?
Ooh, so I have opinions on this. I think they're both secure, but it depends on who you are. So automation engineers, people who want to write code, need to be focusing on cloud. You need to be focusing on that side of things, because there's so much automation that goes into it. Security has automation, but for the bulk of things, security professionals need to be really good at like having really good mental agility when it comes to changing threats. And last week it was this threat, this week it's this threat. Something that I heard somebody said a popular malware approach is something a friend of mine said recently, and I'm just like, are there popular malware approaches, right? And it's just like, oh yeah, there's trends, there's things that are in season, and he's talking about it like clothing styles or teenage slang, but kind of needing to be able to keep up with that is a huge skill, and I would almost say like personality trait for security, but also you do want to think about your job security when it comes to either one of those. And by and large, in my experience, people who are charismatic and clean cut keep a security job better than not. And so that's a place you're going to need to be self-aware. Personally speaking, even when I try to BS around something, I end up just backing off and being like, no, I can't. And I'm way too blunt and straightforward about things to be in security. And I would work myself out of a job way too fast. Whereas security people are paid to sugarcoat stuff and help people feel good. And if you're able to do that, to be honest and good at your job, but also make people feel good, you will keep your job in security. Whereas when the inevitable breach comes, when the inevitable misfortune happens to your company, if people don't have a very reflexive, positive view of you, they're not going to think, they're going to blame you. And further, developers and cloud engineers can prove their worth, but security has to explain their worth. So charisma really comes into play for that. So that it's definitely a self-awareness thing. But I think both job markets are secure. They're both paying well. They're both getting hired. In my experience, it's safe either way.
I feel like I can piggyback on that from the HR perspective as well. And just working with a number of corporate partners. I think one of the things that we do, for those who don't know Tech Talent South, is we train folks to mid-level roles, and then we help pipeline them to corporate partners. And one of the things that we hear repetitively on the corporate partner side, this is like your Salesforce, in your Walmart, and your Cognizant. I mean, just Google. They want developers that they can put in front of clients. And so that makes a difference. And so I would say that there's opportunities for everyone in IT, but there's more opportunities for those folks who can have that empathy. And that's those soft skills.
Soft skills are huge.
Yeah.
Soft skills are huge.
We have a couple more questions, so I want to make sure I grab these. I'm just getting into DevOps. What should I learn first, and do certifications matter? I'm leaning towards AWS or Azure. How do I say it?
Awesome. I'm glad you phrased it like that. Do certifications matter, as opposed to which cert should I get? Certifications matter. They matter based on where you go. So when I say things like this, I'm surprised that a place like Tech Talent South has hired me. But most places, you don't need a cert. And many places, a cert will make you look like you're focusing on the wrong thing. I recently had a conversation with a very, very senior engineer at a consultant agency. And so what they do is they spend 12 to 18 months with different clients in the financial services market, but not just domestically, all around the globe. They've got London, New York, and Charlotte, and Hong Kong, and Singapore, and Australia, right? So they're all over the freaking place. And he's like a senior engineer there. And he mentioned in passing, this is like 2 days ago, that every resume he gets where he gets certifications on it, it always ends up the same way, where they can talk about concepts, but they can't really tell them how they would solve a problem. And so something that I would say, based on my conversations with people who are doing hiring, is that you need to be building projects. If a certification, if in the course of getting a certification, you're building projects, then you will make yourself more hireable for a lot of jobs, especially in the financial services industry. Certifications look really good. But when it comes to very technical positions and you've got a very technical person hiring you, that certification could bite you in the butt if you can't come back and show a project, talk about something that you've built, even if it was a personal project. You need to be able to do it. And that's one of the reasons I really, really love this course that we're going to be doing for DevSecOps, is that there's going to be homework where you're going to be able to actually be building stuff and practicing stuff. So certifications do matter, but not as much as building things and practicing.
That's great feedback. I have a question that's related to this. I'm working in a help desk role, tier 1, and a little bit tier 2 work. I'm trying to get out of help desk. What I need in terms of experience in programming to get into SecDevOps?
If you're working,
would I need experience in programming to get into SecDevOps?
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a good question. Little bit, yes. Yeah. Because it's really hard to work with developers and operations people if you don't know their industry. And the same thing goes for security. You need to know a little bit about all of these things. So you need to at least have built an application. It could be a silly application. One of the first applications I did was to put up a website that had a MySQL database full of Pokemon statistics, and I just threw it up. Here's a little graph, and you can navigate the different statistics, and it had a sliding bar that would do something. I don't know, but it was something, right? It was one of the first things I did, and it was a thing. do a thing. So that way you can empathize with developers at the very least. And knowing programming is going to help you a lot, because when you start working with tools like Terraform and Ansible, you're going to need to know how loops and conditions and variables and things like that work. You have to know how those things work. So it's going to be very, very important. Working in help desk specifically, my friends who work in help desk bust their tails all day long. They're really tired when they go home and they want to read a book, play a video game, hang out with their family. To get out of help desk, you cannot do that. You cannot have fun Monday through Friday. You have to leave that help desk job and pour some sweat, blood, and tears into the grass to make something grow. Yes, have some days off, have a weekend. I'm not telling you to kill yourself, but you have to be bleeding a little bit to get out of help desk. It's a really sad truth, but I've seen it many times. The people who are willing to put in the work will move on to things that pay better and are less stressful.
That's really, thank you. I want to shout you out on the Pokemon thing because I played Pokemon in high school, the cards. So thank you for that. That made me really happy. So back to the certification question really quickly. There was one second piece to that that we didn't answer. AWS or Azure certification recommendation?
Either way. There are loads of shops that do both of them. I use AWS, and some people are calling me up saying, do you know Azure? And I said, I don't know, but I could figure it out. And they're just like, okay, good enough. We need somebody to work on Azure. But that's the part that I would emphasize, is that once you know one of them, you know the concepts for the others. Just saying cloud is secure is not good enough. You need to be able to know how IAM and RBAC work inside there, right? You need to be able to know some of these concepts. And once you know them and you have a little bit of experience with them, it will have a parallel in all of the other systems. So I would say just pick one. Somebody's going to be using that tool, and it will translate to the other one. Not in a one-for-one capacity, but it will translate.
Super helpful. Okay, another a high-level one. How does enterprise architecture within organizations help drive DevSecOps?
Awesome. So in that document that I was sharing earlier, there is the different pillars of DevSecOps. And the way that you design your organization absolutely affects that, and it influences that. There has to be both a grassroots and a top-down approach if you want to have real DevSecOps change, right? If you really want that that holistic shift from slow insecure deployments to fast secure deployments, just to make it as simplified. I don't know why. If you want to make that shift towards DevSecOps, you have to have people on the ground that want to do it, and you have to have people at the top who are creating opportunities for it. I've seen it both ways, where there are people on the bottom who are like, please let us do more automation engineering, for example. And I've seen people at the top who are like, you're now the DevOps people, and developers, you need to send your applications over to the DevOps people, and ops people, you better do what the DevOps people say. And so you've got this like top-down approach to it, but then all that happens is that you've got one team that's now working on integration, delivery, and deployment. And then you've got an application team and a operations team, and there's still walls between them. You haven't torn down the walls. So now the application team's throwing stuff over the wall and just leaving it for the DevOps team. And then the DevOps team's throwing it over the wall to the infrastructure, the ops guys, and those walls are still in place. If you have a holistic, like you said, like enterprise architecture, like planning change where everybody's affected by it and brought into it and involved in the process, it will have a lot more chance at succeeding.
Perfect.
I think if I answered that well,
yeah.
I might swing back around to that in a second.
Perfect. Another question on the personal projects. So what kind of personal projects could I build for DevSecOps to build out a portfolio? You mentioned Pokemon, but any other good examples of things that you've seen, or organizations that allow you to come in? I know that I'm involved in a Slack group called Entrepreneur Chat. So that's a really great networking tool that anybody can get involved in. Sorry if you can hear my dog lapping water in the background. And they're always looking for people to just join on projects and help out, volunteer your services. But what do you think, Eddie?
So like what kinds of projects should you do?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so volunteering is actually a really, really overrated one for developers and DevOps types of professionals. Something I've seen that was really, really effective was a friend of mine a few years ago went one by one through different websites that she'd like stumble across on the internet, and she'd find a bad website. Maybe it was for like an animal shelter or something like I think it was the example you gave, right? And just a bad website. And she'd rebuild it. And then she'd hit him up and she'd be like, hey, do you want this? I already built it. It's free. I just want my name in the footer. That's it. And so now, over the course of a year, she had 6 different websites that she was able to put in her portfolio. She's like, no, these are real websites that real people are using. It's like, but they weren't clients of hers. She just did it and then asked them if they wanted it. And they're like, yeah, it's better than ours. We'll take it. So when it comes to DevOpsy stuff, we are looking at integration, delivery, and deployment. And so you would just need to include that on it. Don't just throw it up on a standalone VM on DigitalOcean or something, but actually create a ECS on AWS and configure your EC2 instances, have some IAM roles in there that you've set up properly, and be able to show and tell how you set that up. It's going to be really, really huge for you in the long run.
Thank you. Another question that we'll see how this goes. What does it cost to, I think the question was, how much does it cost? Budget cuts have really limited us here in government. So I assume the question is, how much does it cost to implement something like DevSecOps?
Yeah. So the cost is going to be on culture change. The cost is going to be in shifting from what you were doing to what you will be doing, because there's a season in time where you're going to be doing both, right? Because you're not going to yet have the new system figured out quite right, and you're still going to have to be maintaining your old systems. There is absolutely a cost. People, evangelists of DevOps, will tell you all day long about how much money it will save you in 10 years, but they won't tell you how much money it's going to cost you in 6 months. I would say the reason that they're not telling you about that is because it's a no-brainer, right? You need to think ahead. You need to plan ahead. You spend money to save money. Obviously, I can't quantify exactly what it would cost, but I would say whatever your hosting is that you're currently doing, you probably double that, right? So if you're spending $10,000 on your IT infrastructure, you probably count on spending another $10,000 extra over the next few months. If it's 10,000 over 6 months, over the next 6 months, you might spend another 10,000. Just to spitball, please do not record this and put me on the internet quoting me on that. But that's just kind of like, you're going to be doing extra work for a few months. But the benefit is that you're going to have such a high turnaround once you containerize your applications. You're going to start speeding things up so much faster that you're going to really quickly start losing development time. You're going to start losing maintenance time, and you're going to start increasing your delivery time. You're going to start seeing a higher user engagement because your applications are going to be better, things like that. Like there's a whole stream of logic that could go downstream from what happens when my application just runs better. All of that's going to be happening, and it will save you money very quickly. But upfront, there's absolutely a cost. I can't estimate it for you, but it shouldn't be neglected. It is an important thing to consider for sure. I'm affirming your question without giving you an answer. I'm sorry.
I think that was a really fair answer. So a question that came in just recently was, will we learn what chain certification is? And I think there was a smiley face with it. So I don't know if it's kind of a joke.
I do not know if that's in the material. I can't.
I think it's on the concept of carryover conversations.
Okay. All right.
Another one just came in from Sean. Do you see it?
Let's see.
Nice ship decanter. Nailed all those CI/CD economies of scale benefits. Chain certs in SSL. Question mark.
See my decanter from there? I'm so proud of it. My wife got it for me for my birthday, and it currently doesn't have any whiskey in it, but that's probably why you're able to see the ship. Yeah. When it comes to certs and things like that, we will touch on it. If there's something you're actually wanting to know and have a deeper conversation about, we could get into that for sure. But there will be time. These are going to be involved classes. These are not going to be lectures. There will be monologue portions, but right now we've got 31 participants, and so we're needing to be a little bit more uninvolved. But for the classes, there's going to be involvement. There's going to be, hey, can you tell me how to do this? There's going to be office hours where for 2 hours a week, I'm just going to be available to y'all to just talk. And you might come to me in one session and I don't know the answer to a question. So then I'll tell you, hey, I'll have the answer by the next time we meet. Because the huge benefit to the situation that we're in is that you're getting access not only to me, but to all of my professional resources that are coming through Tech Talent South and aren't coming through Tech Talent South. So that's a huge benefit, is that we'll be able to just continue some conversations. If you come in and you're saying, hey, I want to learn about chain certs, how much is the course? Honestly, I don't know. I've been kind of protecting myself from knowing that, so that way I don't sound like an idiot when I start talking about value. Thank you, Sean Peterson. That's Sid, by the way.
We have tried, as a technology company, I'm embarrassed to say we've had a lot of challenges changing this name. But I think those are the majority of the questions so far. I know we are at 8:02, so I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Really appreciate you guys spending so much time with us this evening. I know it's right before a holiday and everyone's got a lot of stuff to do. So we genuinely appreciate you being here. Hope you got something out of it. I think Eddie and I both are available as resources after this call as well. So we're here to answer questions. If there's something you didn't get a chance to ask or want more information on, I will make sure to send along those resources for you tonight or first thing tomorrow, as well as our email addresses. So we both, I think, really appreciate connecting and wish we got a chance to see everyone's faces.
Yep. But I think we did good with it. Was that just in 1 hour? That
was an hour.
Okay. As much as I stumbled through that, I'm impressed we got through in an hour. All right. Appreciate all you guys for the questions and the involvement and the alertness.
Yeah, very thoughtful questions. Thank you, everybody. I hope you have a really great night. Thanks for joining us.
Bye, y'all.